Yeah, did you
Okay.
have anything else you wanted to do before I jump
No,
in?
you'll-
I'm a little bit.
Okay. Nope, take it away. You are good to go.
All right, can I share my screen?
Yes.
All right,
Okay,
hopefully you
so
guys
let me
can see.
just do quick introductions for you, by the way, because not everybody, have you ever seen Jared? Okay. I'm a raving fan of Jared Preisler. He literally is like the #1 appraiser in Utah, period. He's also nationally certified. He's a national trainer. Anytime I have questions about real estate and appraisals and value and, you know, adjustments and stuff like that, I can literally text Jared and he takes the time to text me back. Like, that's pretty phenomenal for an appraiser, because most appraisers barely want to talk to any real estate agents. They're like, no, it's almost like they're like your nemesis or whatever. I've known Jared for quite a few years, and in fact ran into him in the airport in Cancun on my way, or no, it was in Salt Lake on my way to Cancun, because we were going to Tulum and he was going down with his wife and in-laws.
Yep, we were heading to Florida.
Anyways, he gave me an update to say, hey, I want to come talk to your team about this thing that's on the horizon. And when Liz posted it in Slack, I said, sounds like we need to get Jared on. So here he is. Take it away, Jared. Tell us what's coming up.
So can you see a blue screen that says ANSI Z765? Okay.
Yes.
So here's a couple of things, and what I'm going to do is I wrote a 4-hour class about this that we've been teaching all over the country. I'm going to boil it down for you guys and how it impacts you and your business and some of the things that you need to be aware of. This actually goes into effect today. Today is the very first day. So any appraisals that we do after today, we have to do them to this new standard. I know, and what we're talking about today is measuring property. What is square footage? What's GLA, gross living area? What's basement square footage? What the difference may be. In December of last year, Fannie Mae made an announcement that beginning April 1st, all appraisals, all property or loans that are sold to them with an appraisal must meet this ANSI Z765 measuring standard. And there are some changes in it that relate to us here locally. We're not as impacted as some other areas. If you've got friends and agents that sell in other parts of the country, there may be a bigger impact than here in Utah. But what I wanted to do is kind of go through a few of these changes and give you some suggestions, some guidelines for maybe what to do. I know that you don't normally measure the property. You maybe rely off of a previous listing. Maybe there's a prior listing in the MLS, and so you copy the detail portion of that listing to power your listing or to begin your listing. You may go to the county records and input the information about the subject property from the county record. And so you're going to want to be a little careful in certain situations going forward. The assessors, the county, they are not bound to report any particular standard for measurement. So this is there could be times when the appraiser is different than the county because of the lending requirements. And also, most architects don't follow the ANSI Z765 standard when they're drawing building plans. So you may have some discrepancies between a builder's plans and what a builder may consider basement area or living area, and what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHA, VA may consider to be living area. And really, the reason why this matters so much is because a lot of our clients, a lot of our customers need to get a loan. If everyone was a cash buyer, then this wouldn't matter at all, because the cash buyers wouldn't matter how we measure it. They would look at the property and say, I think it's valuable and here's my cash. But because we have lending involved, it does matter. And so I'm going to go through just a couple of things, and we're going to leave some time for you to answer some questions as well. The ANSI standard's not new. It started in 1996. It's been updated about every 10 years. And the most recent update was in January of this year is when it went into effect. And then it was approved last year, and it took a year for it to go into effect. There's a couple of changes that for me to highlight for you. In one of the sections, it talks about finishes in area or in flooring and on the walls. And in order for a concrete, a lot of us have properties where maybe we've seen, and it's kind of in style right now to just leave a raw concrete floor. Maybe they buff it out and put a clear coat finish on it. That does not count as a finished floor for Fannie and Freddie. It has to be either stained or it has to be covered with a flooring material like a wood or vinyl, LVP, so if you're counting this space and you say, well, it's got a really nice cement, maybe it's a patio that they enclosed in and they're now using it as a office space, and they just buffed out and finished off the cement floor, put a clear coat on it, and you counted that 150 square feet as living space in your listing, the appraiser is going to come along and say, nope, we can't count that space. And quickly you can probably do the math in your head. If it was $200 a square foot, we could have a value issue of $20,000-$30,000 by eliminating that space. So that's one of the recent changes. Decorative concrete, it has to be finished. The same with walls. They have to have a drywall that's treated or painted, or a paneling. It can't be unfinished drywall. I want to get to a couple of sketches so that you can see.
Can I ask you really quick though, like exposed brick would be totally fine, right? You're just talking about
yep, exposed brick would be good. Yes. So yeah, exposed brick would be acceptable. So one of the things that we do with the appraisers when we're teaching them this class is we talk about the difference between above grade and below grade square footage. And it makes a big difference when we're doing our evaluation, when you're doing a CMA. And also how we count staircases. So you've all been to probably a property that's a 2-story, and there's this nice, real big open to below. Gives us a huge open feeling. Maybe the ceiling height's 16, 18 feet tall from the entryway to the second floor. So a lot of times the county will just count that space, even though it might be 100 square foot where there's no floor. As an appraiser, we're not going to count that space anymore. We can't count that, and you still have a loan that goes through Fannie and Freddie. So this floor plan here shows the area that would be considered floor space. The red outline that you see, when it comes to a fireplace, we don't count the fireplace chase or the chimney chase. If the window is a bay window and there's an actual floor, it extends all the way to the floor, then we count it. But if it's a bench seat, we don't count it. It would be similar to this fireplace. The staircase in this case, it's not open to below, and we would count the entire staircase. Down by this garage space at the bottom where the laundry is, in this example, the laundry room doesn't have access from within the property. So through the dining room, it's only from the garage. It does not count as square footage. And there's might be things that where a difference between the county record, a prior listing, especially if you have a listing that's maybe you know, 10 years old, and they use the builder's plans to begin that listing. And now you're listing it again for the second or third time. And the builder included a space like this in their plans. But I see this a lot of times in townhomes. But so if you get into a situation where it looks a little different than the square footage to you, you may want to have an appraiser come out and measure it, or you may want to talk to the homeowner and see if they've had an appraisal lately, and look at the measurement or the sketch from that appraisal. This is the second floor of this same property, and you can see that they have a loft area. There's that chimney by the bedroom, but it's all open by this staircase. And so we would count only the red area as above grade square footage. Talking about basement areas, there's going to be a difference now of how we calculate finished square footage in the basement. And I would encourage you, as you're doing your listings, to either really try and be a little more accurate on your estimate of percentage of finish in the basement. But even what's more important is getting the room count correctly. You know, I see cases where maybe an agent has listed the property as 90% finish, and I'm looking at the pictures, and there's a family room, and then the rest of it is all unfinished. And they got the family room right, but the percentage of finish was incorrect. As you go to use that as a comparable later in your CMA, you may end up adjusting it may have a very big impact. If you're adjusting by $20 or $30 a square foot for basement finish, and your comp has an extra 700 square foot of finish that doesn't exist, you just lowered the value of your listing by using that listing, because it overstated the value of that basement finish on your CMA. And certainly from the appraisal standpoint, we're going to have challenges. We're going to have challenges in that. So the change here is we measure from the outside of the house to the outside of the partition wall, not the inside and inside. It may seem like a small change, but this could be 25 or 50 square foot difference as you multiply it throughout the entire property. Probably the biggest change is going to come in basement. What's a basement, and what is above grade square footage, and they have distinct value differences. I think I can annotate here. So I want to, this is probably the one thing I want to make sure you understand the most, because it impacts all of us. So let's see. This home has a at grade garage. So we drive into the garage, but in the back of the house and the side of the house, the grade comes all the way up to this main level. And then of course, it's easy for us to tell this basement level. Going forward from today forward, this entire level is now considered below grade.
Oh.
Okay. So let's say here's my living room, right? Oh, this is hard, you guys. Living room, it's hard to draw with the mouse. My kitchen is back here. So now I don't have a kitchen on the main floor. I have a house that has a bedroom. And let's say there was a bathroom up there. Because wherever this grade comes, it's that entire floor is now basement square footage.
Wow.
Starting today. Now, I can guarantee you the county records, they're going to show this level as above grade. GLA, gross living area is what we call it, right? And certainly I drive into the garage. I don't drive down to the garage. So that's going to make a big difference when we're calculating. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value it can still have value. It just may be counted differently, and I'm going to have to find other properties that have the same type of floor plan or configuration. So that's going to be a big difference. As you're doing your CMAs, I think your CMA, if I'm correct, I don't play with yours very much, but if I'm correct, you can edit some of the fields within that CMA.
Yes. Yep.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're going to want to make sure that you spend just a little bit of extra time and get it right. Because you don't want to go in and say, here's what I think we should price where we think we should price the property, and end up using some properties that maybe your price was too low or too high, and so then it sits on. I had a situation, and I don't believe any of you guys were involved in it, where there was a major error in the CMA. The listing agent did not catch the error and overpriced the property by $40,000. Well, the buyer's agent trusted that the listing agent had done her job in listing it correctly, and they made an offer of $40,000 over the list price to be competitive and get the property under contract. When I did the appraisal, I asked to see the CMA because I was really struggling with where this property was priced. And when she showed me her CMA, I went through it with her line by line, and we recognized the $40,000 error. My opinion of value ended up being $70,000 lower than the purchase price, but it was right where it should have been priced to begin with. At the end of the day, it was correct, but it was a pretty embarrassing situation for that listing agent. The listing agent said, "Oh my goodness, I don't even know how to go back to my client and tell them that I made this $40,000 mistake." And as we talked through it, she could clearly see the challenge that I was having. So it makes a pretty big difference, especially in a market like we have today and that we've had in the last 24 months. Getting that pricing right is very important. Can
I ask you one quick question on this?
You bet.
So before today, with that grade where it was, you could have counted that as gross living area, correct?
Right.
So say that's at 100% gross living area value. Now with it being below grade and not gross living area value, like what does that drop that percentage by? What did we just lose in value in that space starting tomorrow?
Yeah, so it could have a as big of an impact as 30% for that level, that floor level. It could be, if that floor level was, say, 300 or 400 square foot, say this is a multi-level and that level is now 400 square foot. My adjustment, typically above grade, below grade adjustment might be at $60 to $70 a square foot, and the below grade could be at $30 to $40 a square foot. So we could have a incremental difference of somewhere around $30 a square foot, comparing that. So that's akin to a $15,000 to $20,000 difference for that one level versus a home where the grade came in at the basement level instead of above that.
Question just logistically on this as well, because of course my brain starts going into, okay, our CMA only has basement level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And I've already asked the MLS if they would update to where you can have basement level 1, 2, 3, 4, because that way you can still line item what's on each level. Because even in a lot of, right, we've talked about this, our Harrisville rent, we ran into this years ago, that we counted out as above grade because you have daylit windows, but because of the grade in the back, it counted out as below grade and the appraisal came in too low. So I was like, well, we need to be able to figure out how to now readjust all these levels so they're accurate to show below basement or above, level 1, level 2. How are you going to do that now as you're pulling comps, because it's been put in so long as level 1, when now
Yeah.
it's technically basement level 1?
So the appraiser's responsibility is to certify that they've measured to ANSI standard and that the comparables have been verified to ANSI standard. So I'm going to look at each of those comparables. Yep. And your photos, I'm going to spend more time looking at your photos and saying, okay, where that backyard photo, you guys can't even imagine how important that is. The photo of the back of the house. I know it seems kind of crazy. A lot of times we don't see them. There's only a little, 10 by 10 patio there. Why am I going to take a picture of it? Why is your photo service taking a picture of it? For me, seeing those windows and where they come in, that could make a huge difference. And so we spend a lot of time calling, looking at those photos, trying to get it right. When I drive the property, I had one
that touches that level essentially now counts it as below grade.
As below grade. Yep. Yeah. And that's so if you have an appraiser that's calling you and saying, hey, I really need to understand this, be responsive to them, be helpful, let them know what the situation is. The one last thing that we'll touch on real quick is
Can I ask you a question really quick, Jared, on that?
Yes.
This is Liz Sears. So when Ashley came and spoke to us at the board of directors, she was saying that the measurement doesn't necessarily have to affect the value if there's enough market data proving that a buyer is willing to pay it. So even though there's the grade that comes up that causes that what would have been the main floor to now be considered below grade, and that normally we would make an adjustment for that. If we have comps that prove it, kind of like you were saying about the backyard, that an adjustment could be made to evaluate it the same as we would have anyways. We just have to have data to support it.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So if I can find some other comps that had the same grade and I can show that there was no negative impact on value, or it was minimal, then I could give that basement square footage $60 a square foot. And that just as much.
So we just need to know how to explain that to an appraiser and help find the data sometimes.
Correct. And it's going to be important to do things like, daylight basement, even things like, you've been in a basement where there's a 3 foot by 3 foot window. And then you've been in the one where it's a 4 by 5 foot window. It's a big, huge 4050 window. And just the total feeling of the difference, the light that comes in, how that basement's been treated, that can make a huge difference. And so things like that, having those photos there, being able to describe, those will really help a lot. Great questions. So one other thing that is a big change is now in attic finish. So we don't have as many of these in our newer homes because we don't really have Cape Cod style homes, but especially in more developed or more mature neighborhoods like downtown Ogden, where maybe they've finished off some attic space, or the avenues in Salt Lake, areas where we have some older homes that have attic finish. There's a change now. We used to look at wherever the 4 foot mark was, and I would draw an imaginary line down and I would measure all the way across to the next 4 foot area. So let's say that this was 12 feet from 4 foot imaginary line to 4 foot imaginary line. Now it goes 5, so it changes from 4 foot to 5 foot. So maybe this now is 9 feet across in the attic instead of 12 feet. And if this was 30 feet long, we just lost 90 square feet of GLA by this, yep. And then the other distinction is that this entire space, at least 50% of it must have a ceiling height of at least 7 feet. So let's say that the pitch here came all the way up and none of it was only this very little sliver right down the center was 7 feet tall. That means that none of this space is GLA. They could have the coolest little kids loft bedroom up there, and none of that is gross living area. Okay, so that's a change. It also impacts the
So
basement.
would you give that space 0 value?
I would take that space and I would say finished loft. I would put it on one of my last line items in the appraisal, and I would say it does have some value. Let's say a regular bedroom has a $10,000 value if the bedroom was in this space.
Mhm.
But so it might have a $10,000 value, or before it had 10,000. It may have a reduced value, $7,000-8,000. It may have the same value, 10,000. I would go find other sales that had this same scenario, take those finished lofts, put it in the same place. So I'd take it out of the GLA on my grid, put it in the extra line item and say, here's a comparable that also has a finished loft, and the adjustment's 0 because they're equal. Here's one that doesn't have a finished loft, the adjustment's plus $10,000 for an example. So it will have, and I have to treat it that way. Ignoring it is a violation. I can't just say, oh, it doesn't exist. There wasn't that staircase, that space wasn't finished. But I was in one in Ogden the other day that literally was the scenario I just described. And I'm not a very tall person. I'm rather, well, I couldn't play basketball even on the church league. I'm pretty short, and I had a hard time walking through the property. I'm 5'8", and I had to duck in many of the areas. And really it just became, the value was just storage. It was just finished storage area. This guy had bought the property.
Sorry, is this similar to basement heights? Because you and I have talked about this before.
Yes. So the other thing is going to be the basement height. Same type of thing. We have a home that has a 6'10" basement ceiling. That now cannot be counted as finished area. I'm going to say I have a basement shell, and then the finished area is going to be handled on a separate line item, separate from the rest of. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. You know, you've all been in the house where, you know, you walk through the basement, or the one where they paid for the extra 1 foot of ceiling height in the basement. Instead of an 8-foot ceiling, it's a 9-foot ceiling. And you say, gosh, I'm going to get extra value. The market's going to like this better. And so we're going to price it a little bit more for that and see how much more we can get from it. Same principle as the appraisers. We're just going to deal with it a little bit differently. So those are the big changes, I think, for you guys in the quick time that I have.
Thanks,
I'm happy.
Jared, you're amazing.
I'm happy to answer questions. Stay on for a minute if anybody wants, or you know, you can get my my phone number, and I'm happy to call you or take a call from you anytime.
Does anybody have anything urgent and pressing right now on your minds? Again, I'll share Jared's contact information. He's in our preferred vendor list, but I'll also post it in our training Slack with this recording, so you guys all have it. Save his number in your phone. Really. And I oftentimes, if I'm questioning the size, square footage anyways, I'll pay him, or my sellers will pay him to go out and measure their homes. And now I have certified, you know, square footage from an actual appraiser, because I'm not going to do that. And I've had clients very exaggerate what they think their house's size are, and the comps can vary greatly and the value can vary greatly because of those mistakes. So you're amazing,
We're happy to
Jared.
do that. Hey, the next time you invite me, I want to talk about accessory dwelling units, ADUs,
Yes.
and what those are. So we might need more than 15 minutes, and sorry I took 25 or 30.
Okay.
they're complex.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
have that.
All righty.